listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses, in the episode for Friday, March 8th, 2024. And, I mean, we don't need to make excuses for why we don't have an episode. It's our dang show.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just weren't feeling it. But now we're here. And it's a new week. It's a new month. Mm-hmm. And that's great.
It's March. It was going to be March last week, but two. But, you know.
Well, I have it on good authority that it actually was March last week.
There we go.
There we go. How's March treating you so far?
It's just another month. It's a month that I'm just gonna pass.
I've been seeing a lot of those the classic, especially since post 2020, but definitely post 2016 memes of like, oh god, this has been a terrible year, and they're like, oh, it's only March.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff, right? But speaking of March and marching forward, we figured this would be a good enough time, since we haven't, we're not Dune heads. We're not here to talk about Dune. Although I did rewatch part 1 this weekend. Pretty good movie. A lot of brown. Reminded me of an Xbox 360 game.
I've not seen it yet.
It's good.
It's this thing is it like it's long.
It is. We broke it up over 2 days.
And I think I've gotten to the point. So this joke, and I think I messaged you this weekend, or that I think like 3 or 4 times this weekend, I wanted to start watching Oppenheimer because it's streaming on Paramount Plus. And every time, like, I literally would start it, and I'd see the little progress bar, and it'd be like 3 hours plus, and I'd be like, no, I don't have time for that.
When a movie incites that same level of like, oh god, this is as far as we've gotten, as you get when doing like a training course to meet some sort of requirement for work,
right? Like,
hey, that's not a good sign.
And it's honestly like, I get these are all movies that people love. I don't know. And the joke is that I'll watch 3 hours of a TV show.
Right.
But I think it's this idea that like, there are natural stopping points that happen regularly, right? So it lets me off ramp in a way that a 3-hour magnum opus does not.
Right. So you're saying in that sense, the Snyder cut was beneficial? Didn't have like title cards or no? Was that?
That was the Snyder cut did that. Yeah. Although I will say that they were a trick because like they were really real quick one after the other. And then all of a sudden the last one is like 2.5 hours or whatever, right? So it's like, it feels like they're going to be episodes, but the last episode is very long.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know if it's worth a topic on its own at some point, but we have often lamented or discussed or noticed just the increasing length of movies. And I think especially with previous discussions where we've talked about like the serialization of TV, how these are basically 10-hour movies or 13-hour movies in a lot of ways. Like, it's strange how movies have found attraction with being super long. Like,
right.
Endgame and of course Oppenheimer and the Dune movies. Like the general public seem to be fine with this. But then there's also the question that I think you more than between the two of us would ask is like, well, then why not just make it like a limited series?
Right. And of course we know why, because people don't go to the theater to watch limited series. At least not anymore.
What they do with these run times, holy crap.
Well, that's of course the real joke is when you have a 2.5 to 3 hour movie and it's subtitled Part 1. Right, I think it was Mission Impossible something Part 1, runtime of 2 hours and 45 minutes. And like, holy shit.
Right. Which I have the same argument for that movie that I do with the Marvel movies. No Mission Impossible movie should be 2 hours and 45 minutes. The Impossible Mission shouldn't be finishing the film.
Right.
That's just my argument. But we want to focus on well, speaking of like a limited series or focused things, we want to talk a bit about a limited series. We're going to talk about Marvel, actually, speaking of that as well.
After you just spent all your time making fun of Marvel.
But recent movie and a recent miniseries that they released. that now both Andrew and I have seen
Yeah.
the entirety of. Which one? I'll let you choose. Where do you want to start?
I think we're talking about Echo,
Echo.
which is a series it's a Marvel series.
It's a Marvel Spotlight.
Which is apparently a new branding. I will laugh if this is the only Marvel Spotlight that ever gets made.
It's a new branding with an occupancy of 1 now.
And it's basically a kind of a continuation of a character that was introduced in Hawkeye, the character of Echo. Man, that's it ends up. And I think it was 6 episodes. We both watched it. It was pretty concise. Tells the story of this young woman who's essentially I guess you could say kind of a protege of Kingpin. The villain that's
Wilson Fisk,
prominently featured in the Daredevil series, and then also in Hawkeye, is sort of what was an unexpected appearance.
Very short appearance, which actually the end of that appearance led to this show specifically.
And honestly,
also I just want to add one thing, and also featuring a character who is deaf and
in missing a limb, right? One of her feats.
And also of Native American origin.
Yeah.
Which, for me, I found really compelling, especially coming right off of watching Reservation Dogs and talking about, and praising it wholeheartedly. But, yeah, so what do you think? How do you think of it as it's a Guy Den, honestly, right? It
is, and maybe that's actually what Marvel Spotlights are going to be. Well, and apparently the Spotlight, I looked it up. I guess what they're saying is they're supposed to be somewhat standalone stories where you don't have to watch the whole Marvel multiverse of nonsense to follow what's going on. And I think actually with this one, right, obviously it helps to have seen Hawkeye. But sure. I think if you hadn't, you're not. They kind of give you everything you needed for this character,
right? And
while there are connections to other Marvel stuff, including an appearance by Daredevil, if you don't need that, it's more of just oh hey, isn't that cool, right? As opposed to no, now this is a multiversal hoo-ha where you have to know every detail of everything. That's no. Right.
It's very character forward. It's very character centric, which. That's my jam, completely.
Right. And I think it's also, one thing is I think I've admitted pretty regularly or pretty often that I watch everything with subtitles now. At some point in my life, I turned into that person. And this was the first time I actually wondered, because it's a show with sequences where nobody's actually speaking, no one's verbalizing. They're speaking in sign.
Good correction. Yeah.
And it's weird because no problem. I can see what they're saying because of the subtitles. I was like, I'm assuming they just have subtitles for this in, for the people who don't know sign language. It was this thing where, because the subtitles, it wasn't like these are clearly different. Right. It's like sometimes if you watch stuff with subtitles, you see, here are the subtitles that everyone sees. And then there's the subtitles that you normally see as like the closed caption or whatever. This is no, they all kind of blended together. And part of me actually wanted to stop it and try to rewatch a scene with the subtitles turned off to see what it's like. But then I couldn't determine if I was failing to turn off the subtitles or if it just has the subtitles.
Right.
Which I think it just does.
But except for there's a really interesting sequence at the end of the series where I think, do they even cut out the sound? I can't remember. But some pretty impressive stuff just to kind of highlight Echo's point of view.
Right. But yeah, it was so I would say it was kind of a show that did a lot of things that maybe we don't normally see, right? It featured a character who is deaf, so we predominantly see her communicating through sign. We have I think entirely on. I don't know if it's on a reservation. I think it is, right? Most of it.
I think it is. Yeah. No, it is. Yeah.
So that's interesting. About kind of this. She's not. She grew up in the city, doing crime, but we get to see kind of her family and her extended family.
Yeah, in any other context, this would be like a comedy of like, the person going home, the home they don't miss, the home they don't want to go back to, but they have to for some reason, and interacting with all the people they grew up with, going like, "You're so different now," and stuff like that.
Right.
But no, this is Marvel, so it's serious.
It's serious.
Well, this is like street level Marvel, so it's serious.
Right. And I would say it definitely has the street level aesthetic that it doesn't have the level of gore and violence that I think we saw with the Markflix shows, the Marvel Netflix, which honestly, that's fine because I'm still remembering watching Daredevil and I don't need to see poor Charlie Cox get the actual just stuff and beaten out of him repeatedly, bleeding everywhere. This definitely didn't have that, but it had this like, this is just this one person. There's the villain is Kingpin, who's really just a kingpin.
Right, yeah. I'm just a big dude.
I mean, he definitely has like some kind of, villainic. Is it villainous?
Yep.
Villainous.
As an English teacher, I approve your word creation.
Villainous might, right? He's obviously not just a normal dude, but this is him doing normal stuff mostly. Yeah, and I thought it was in her just being, doing her thing. So that's me doing a rambling intro that we watched Echo. Yeah.
It's interesting in the sense that I'm trying to think. I guess Hawkeye is a good analog here because it is fairly super powerless, with withholding the ending sort of fight, and hints at sort of a supernatural force at play. I don't know much about the comic book character, but there seems to be some pretty significant differences from the comic. Not only in terms of visual representation, where she has like a handprint on her face, like the Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings, but her superpowers, because as we all do, because we're nerds, I'm like, what's her comic book character analog like? And her superpower is similar to Taskmaster, who is like, she has the ability to basically mimic the fighting style of whoever she is fighting. That's the comic version of her, which we just see her as being a very capable fighter and a person that just survives in the show. And then the supernatural kind of stuff added on to it. But what I really like is how they tied everything into. Well, let's just say it like this. I was really motivated and interested in the Native American aspect. That's the stuff that I hyper-focused on. Like I said, especially coming off of the very silly at times, but grounded, I don't know, magical realist Reservation Dogs. This almost felt like a weird like sequel to that. Not only because a lot of the cast from Reservation Dogs appears in the show, which is super cool to see, but just like the vibe of like the reservation vibe was like the same. It was really interesting. So it's showing me that they did a fair amount of homework for this show as well. But what really stood out to me is not necessarily anything that happened in the show. It's more the structure of the show. Because did you notice the titles of the episodes?
Weren't they all in? Wait, no, I'm confusing it for something else. Never mind.
They're all named after women that Echo is related to, her like ancestors.
Oh, okay.
So it's probably, and it's been longer since you've seen the show than I have, so fair enough. But like each episode kind of started with a flashback, or had a flashback to an ancestor of Echo's, going all the way back to the creation of the Choctaw, to her parents, to everything in between, to the arrival of the colonists, stuff like that. But what seemed like an interesting novelty at the beginning builds and builds to an incredible through line that I think has a very earned sort of reveal and crescendo at the end that actually made it hit really hard for me. I got pretty emotional with that ending, despite the fact that she's literally beating the shit out of people. I'm like, fuck yes, this is like what representation can look like in superhero form. Not just that this person is Native American, but like there's a connection here it connects to the culture, to the mythology of the culture, and also kicks ass. It's a really interesting and evocative and compelling realization of what, in a sense, Native American culture can look like in a superhero context. Not just someone that wears that wears Native American clothes and has a feather in a bandana and is named something that someone's found in a book. It's actually more thoughtful and developed than that. That was pretty, for me, a very satisfying experience. Again, as someone that is not Native American in any shape or form, but.
Actually, I want to make a correction. I think I said 6 episodes. It's actually only 5. I mean, it's even shorter. Hell, could have been a movie.
Could have been, right? I feel like I say this after I watch every good Marvel show, but there's something emotional about it, something that really hit me, that really did make me walk away saying, I think this is the best Marvel show, especially, I've seen. Might be one of the best Marvel things I've seen because of how character-centric it is, because of how focused it is, and how well thought out it is. Even though I'm sure people could poke holes in stuff, but I'm not a plot guy. I don't care. But yeah, it's interesting, I think, for us, how we kind of found different things to latch onto watching the show. You were like really focused on the sort of the metatextual play with the deafness, and I'm just like, let's get historical, y'all.
Well, there was also, I think there was a point where they did, friend of the show Taylor always loves to talk about some ratio.
Aspect
ratio shifting. Because there's a scene where basically they play a whole bit as like a silent movie.
That's right. Yeah.
Which I like, and that kind of stuff is, I always think that's kind of neat. And the thing is, they did it in a way that didn't feel silly. Like it fit in the theme of this. It wasn't like, oh, we're breaking the mood to do this thing. No, it totally kind of fit along with everything else. The one thing I will say is, for me, I would also just say that, like, honestly, Vince D'Onofrio, other than being probably like one of the most been in the most Marvel shit people, right?
Yeah, it speaks a lot to like for an actor to show so much commitment. Like, that keeps getting you jobs.
Well, what I would say is that, and I think he's actually said this, that in this show, right, he portrays the character slightly differently than he did in Hawkeye, because Hawkeye was a different kind of show. This one, he definitely portrays him more like he did in the original Marvel show, Netflix shows, where like he has this thing where it's like, at least for me, I get uneasy watching him. Right, it's like he's captured this character, like the menace of this character, in a way that, like, wow, man, like, easily I have to stop and think about all the villains that Marvel's done, but he's easily like in the top like 2, and I don't know who, like, whatever, he's
probably like him and Loki, right? That people should be talking about his Fisk as they do Loki, honestly,
right? And except that with this, unlike Loki, who's just Loki, like with Fisk, it is just like, it's just pure, like, yeah, it's menace. And I actually thought it was like he did that, and it's like he came back to it as if he was doing it all along, right? Like,
yeah.
And to have these tiebacks to the things from the original Daredevil that we don't really need to ever see again, because like they had kind of they expanded into like that history of that character in brutal ways.
Yes, like that, the humanization, or like the contextualization of Kingpin was fantastic and unexpected. Like, yeah, brutal. I think you're right, absolutely brutal.
So yeah, and honestly, and I'm just gonna say this is a side story, I guess a spoiler here. There's a whole scene where he basically, we discover that, like, although he raised Maya as like a daughter, sort of, he basically never learned sign language, right? Other than the most basic things. And we have the scene where he basically says, oh, here, don't worry, I got it solved. Here's these these technological contact lenses that let you understand what I'm saying in sign, even though I'm speaking it to you. And it's funny because I was like, wow, that is the most kingpin fucking thing. You probably spend millions and millions of dollars so you could talk to your, surrogate daughter
This revolutionary technology, yeah.
instead of just taking the fucking time to learn sign language.
Right? He developed this incredible revolutionary technology, and he's not going to license that shit out. He did it just for this.
Just for this one person.
Like, come on. So you couldn't be bothered to speak to your ostensible daughter, and you've made this incredible advancement in technology that could increase the ability for people to communicate. And it's for me. Like, what another level or layer of villainy.
Right, and it's also just and how Fisk, and the thing is, I remember, I think I messaged you and Taylor, and I think Taylor made the comment but that's, or maybe it was I was hanging out with him and talking to him. He made this comment but that's exactly Fisk, right? Like, yeah, you're such a shithead. You would do this, which I get. And the thing is, it's also unlike a lot of Marvel villains. Everything about Fisk is because it's street level. It's always been pretty believable, right? Like,
yeah.
This person exists, right? This person really is, other than, okay, he gets shot in the face and just gets up, like it doesn't matter, whatever. But this person is real, which I think is something you don't get a lot. Marvel movies tend to be obviously a little hyperbolic and whatever.
Sure. Yeah,
this guy is actually running a real company in the real world, causing real hurt to people, right? He's probably a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar. Which I did. I that's why I think I really enjoyed that, and I like to see it. And honestly, I hope he just keeps doing it, and doing different presentations of the character. Exactly. I want to always say, I think I mentioned when we saw Hawkeye, I like the fact that it was a slightly sillier version of, to the point where they even had him in like a Aloha shirt or whatever, right? Like,
right, yeah.
Like, just to let you know, and they describe, I think he even said, well, no, that's perfectly reasonable. That's different writers write comics characters different ways. This was, Wilson Fisk in a sillier comic, where now we're back to, him hammering people to death or whatever. Or,
but you can rationalize it. I could see Fisk going, "Look at me, I'm fun. See my shirt? I'm a great time.
So
what's wrong with you people?"
Yeah, and then he then murders, punches someone to death, right? Yeah, man, don't mess around with that guy in ice cream cones. I got to mention the ice cream cone scene. What we saw in this show is Wilson Fisk's commitment to the ADA. The American Disabilities Act, and accommodations for the deaf, right? Someone denied his daughter service, and he brought an action against them. Perhaps not a civil action.
No,
it was a very uncivil action.
Yes, he filed a complaint with his fists.
With his fists, the thunder and the lightning. But anyway, that's me kind of praising the villainous character that is Fisk.
And it seems kind of like a strange shift here, even though we're staying within Marvel, where I had to catch up with you watching Echo. You finally caught up with me, and you finally saw the Marvels.
Yes,
and we can spend a little time talking about that because it is. It became, I think, in the discourse, ammunition for the Marvel haters to say, look, Marvel sucks now. Because, and we've had this talk when we talked about, what was the official name of that Ghostbusters? Not Afterlife, but the one before
Ghostbusters, Answer the Call.
Answer the Call,
it got rebranded as, yeah.
Right. Kind of like this, there's a lot of similar discussion that I noticed, a lot of parallels with that. Where, like, if you looked at it through one lens, it was an abject failure. Look at it through another lens, it did perfectly fine. And people are just picking whatever lens they want to talk about this film. Because in one sense, this didn't make $1 billion. On another sense, it's the highest grossing opening weekend for a black woman director ever. So, like, at this point, I'm still just kind of, I don't want to say this. At this point, I'm still fascinated by the meta commentary around this movie. While the movie itself is just for me, I kind of came with it going like it was a fun time.
It was fun.
It's the big crossover that we all were hoping for. It's Captain Marvel, after her debut in Captain Marvel and her appearances in Infinity War and Endgame. And then
just Endgame. Just Endgame.
Oh, she didn't show up at all? Oh, you're right. And her and the cinematic debut of Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, and or Kamala Khan? Kamala Khan.
No, it's different than the vice president.
Yes. It's Kamala. And the cinematic debut of Kamala Khan from after her wonderful Disney Plus series, Ms. Marvel. And of course, Monica Rambeau. And
in her cinematic debut,
yeah. No. She was in Captain Marvel.
Was she? Was as actress? Kid. I think as a kid. You're right.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. This is all Marvel's complicated.
It's complicated. But here's the thing: is people can and actually I think I agree with you. It's the Miss Marvel movie.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I think this is the definition of a romp. Like, this is good times.
And maybe because I liked her so much, that's why I thought the movie was a lot of fun. It wasn't perfect. I didn't, I had some issue with. I think actually what I'll say is my biggest complaint is my two biggest complaints. One is this kind of like everything has to get real bad. Like, the Skrulls' new homeworld has to just get trashed. It's trashed, right? Right. And then the Bollywood musical planet or whatever, the musical planet basically starts getting trashed. And that one we fixed it. But like, no one fixed the Skrulls planet. It's fucked, And it's the idea that like, oh no, like, and that's kind of, it's the beat where no, we have to see two failures before we finally see success. It's kind of like the formula they're following. And I'm like, oh man, do we need that? Couldn't this just been a fun romp, And also the fact that it ended with spoiler again, with Monica Rambeau kind of sacrificing herself to save the universe, and I wanted her just come back on the other side. You're like, we don't need to end with the ultimate sacrifice. We did that a couple of years ago. We keep ultimate sacrificing people. Just knit it shut and come back. Instead, no. And honestly, I get they're setting up this big whatever. She's now trapped in the world with Big Blue Fraser.
I was gonna say, you better watch yourself, my friend. Forget who you're talking to.
Big Blue Fraser.
They call me.
It's just this idea. And my biggest concern is that kind of as Marvel is kind of not spiraling out of control, but certainly reevaluating their projections in their future, I worry that that's going to be the last we see of her, and it's going to be like, sorry, you're just stuck in this other universe that isn't yours. Eat shit. Other than that, again, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, that actor, she could just do whatever she wants. I'll be like, this is great,
Please. Right?
Like, just give me, and of course they even have the end teaser thing of basically her doing the setting up the Young Avengers. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. Just give me whatever you want. I'll watch these movies, these TV shows, whatever you give me, I'll watch them.
That's the thing. The biggest argument is like she's kind of. I mean, this is going to be a strange comparison, but kind of like Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk. She's clearly a villain. No, she super loves the role.
Yeah,
and she flourishes in it. Like this is genuinely the best part of the movie. And that's saying a lot because there's a lot going on in the movie and a lot of parts that I think are really fun. Mm-hmm. I like the cat stuff. That was goofy as hell. All the kittens and their get out of jail free card with all those kittens and all that stuff. I just thought lean into the silliness, and she's able to kind of ground it from just being so enamored of basically being a superhero. This is like, basically you could subtitle this movie, "Wow, I'm a superhero." And it's all grounded by her performance. I think it's a lot of fun, and it sells it. But yeah, like you said, is it the best Marvel movie ever? No. But is it a waste of an hour? How long is it? Hold on.
Oh, that's the other thing. It's only like what, 90?
95. It's 105 minutes.
105 minutes. That's a good movie length right there.
It's perfect. You know what? It's the best movie.
It's the best movie ever. It is the right length. And it's hard because like while there are fair criticisms that some people can levy, sure, it is hard not to feel like there's a, as you compared it to the Ghostbusters film, there is this undercurrent of some of the criticism is ew, a movie with girls, or some flavor of that. Ew, girls,
and as if that's why it failed.
Right. And of course, that's some people say, oh, it failed. Well, there's actually a lot of reasons why financially it did not do well. Coming right at the tail end of a SAG-AFTRA strike.
That's the thing. Yeah, they weren't allowed to promote
it. Also, still, like, movies right now are not. This is a thing people are like. Everyone's starting to realize, like, yeah, we're not in the era of blockbuster after blockbuster, right? This is actually where, like, yeah, a lot of movies aren't doing well, right?
Yeah, unless you're an overlong biopic about a dealer of death,
or
a surreal interpretation of a classic toy.
And there's other successes, but it's just not. It's not like it feels like it's not like it used to be for various reasons. I think I'm guilty of it. I don't go to the movie theater, and honestly, they're reinforcing me not going to the movie theater, right? Because like at this point, most people say, "Oh, the movie comes out, it's going to be on a streamer in 60 to 90 days." Like that's like, and honestly, I've heard some things are getting shorter. It's just like, oh, it's just bang it on the streams.
There's an argument about the whole superhero fatigue. I don't know if I'd say that, but like, as the next Marvel film, it does carry that baggage with it, and a lot of the most recent Marvel films have been either weird, doing new things, or have just kind of fallen flat with audiences. I think all the ones I've seen, there's generally good stuff about all of them. But yeah, I mean, it's not hitting the epic highs that they seem to be hitting with, like, I would say maybe, I don't know what the phases are, but the stuff leading up to like the first Avengers movie or Infinity War. And so I think there's a lot of skepticism around that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's, sometimes fun movies, good movies just don't hit, and that's how cult classics are created, honestly. We just described John Carpenter's career. And yet he's a legend that can play video games and just sign and receive checks. So I'm not too worried about it. And Disney seems to be pretty loyal to its cast, generally speaking. I mean, with the exception of the actors to play Rhodey, but with the enthusiasm. I mean, if they were able to get Vincent D'Onofrio back, to get what is it called, Matt Murdock, the actor that plays Charlie Cox, to get Charlie Cox back, then they have no reason to not just keep Ms. Marvel in their back pocket, because she's incredible.
Yeah,
and I as you said, actually, what that. Almost as fun as the movie is, that whole kind of teaser with the Young Avengers actually kind of was refreshing. Like, this sounds cool, right? I can see hardcore nerds being like, "Oh, Marvel's just all about kids now." I'm like, well, they are about comics.
Actually, it ends up they've always that's always been a big part of the demo there, kids.
But like, that sounds cool. Like, let's do it, And it's an easier sell than the Eternals. Like, hey, want to watch a movie about gods that are sad?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but like, that's a Ridley Scott movie.
Yeah, you just really summed that up, didn't you? Christopher Nolan presents The Eternals.
Right. I thought that movie was fine. This movie was good. I was also really intrigued by it because I've seen one movie that the director had made before. She actually did an incredible, not remake, but a reboot, a new movie called Candyman that was incredible. Okay. That movie was great. And so it was actually to go from that to this. I think this was, let me look. Yeah, this was her next movie, which is, talk about a phase shift. It was pretty great. So, if anything, it's a good advertisement for the range of that director, and God, it is a good showcase for those characters too. I like them all. I like the. I thought it was really playful with that sort of mechanic that the movie was built around. How they all, whenever they use the powers, they flip around, and they did some cool stuff with that. It was fun. It was just fun. Maybe it's a good or bad thing that I don't know if I feel like there's maybe not a lot to go into, but like, it was just fun.
Yeah. No, and again, I think for me, maybe I enjoyed it as much as I did, because I really focused on Ms. Marvel. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it really, like, Captain Marvel's fine, but it did feel like Brie Larson's primary purpose to be there was to kind of not pass the torch, but like, you know, make Miss Marvel the next person in this succession, right? Like I said, it's literally passing the torch. And, you know, and if Brie Larson kind of never does a Marvel film again, that's fine. You know, she did 2.5 or 3. And they were like, and there's nothing wrong with them. Not everyone's going to be the 8 or 9 movie, you know, returning actor. Like everyone does their own thing. But I'll be, like I said, when they do the Young Avengers or the new event, whatever they're going to call it, the new Avengers, I'll be interested to see it. You know, I like what they got. I think these kids, I hope these kids don't all like get, you know, trapped into 32 movie contracts or some shit. Like,
or when they finally get to the Young Avengers movie, they're all 35.
Yeah, it's going to be the middle-aged Avengers, right? That's actually a really good point. I didn't even think of that. It's like, oh yeah, by the time they even start, oh yeah, look, they're all in their 30s.
So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page. Or I guess maybe you can't. I don't know. I hear Facebook was having a problem this week.
You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram at @Bethel You can find Andrew on Mastodon at profounddark@dice.camp.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also follow the link in the corner that says YouTube to see our YouTube page. There you can listen to the show simulcast in YouTube. If you do listen to the show on YouTube, feel free you can comment there. You can also like and subscribe, or as the kids like to say, ring the bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusae, the other is called District 4, both written and performed by Kevin McLeod of the Clan McLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 Attribution License.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. But what would help us out even more would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using the proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. I think I got a little bit of the spice. I'm a little excited for Dune, Part 2.
Okay.
What's your history with the Dunes?
I've seen at least one permutation of the David Lynch film.
Right.
And I've seen episodes of the sci-fi miniseries.
Oh, wow.
I have played multiple video games, including the original Dune and the 1990 X classic Dune 2.
Dune 2, the game that changed the world, I would say.
The game that's actually attributed is given credit for being probably the first real-time strategy game, if not the first, at least the first like kind of popular one.
Yeah. So what was the Dune 1 game?
It was more of like an adventure game set to the story of the movie.
Oh, okay.
Which it's really weird because you're like, oh, it's weird that they have Dune 1 and Dune 2 and they're like completely different games. Like,
right.
One is just you're playing through the movie, and the other one is, or a combination of the movie and the I think the books, but with some other stuff. And then Dune 2, which is like absolutely nothing to do with the movie at all, just fucking blow shit up and smash those shitty Harkonnen.
I don't think they've done any video game tie-ins with the first one, which means that'd be even better to like. They should release a new real-time strategy game just called Dune Part 2.
They could,
and they should, perhaps.
I mean, and what I'll say is actually to that point, this is a final segue. The real-time strategy is back as a format, right? The no-clip documentary series. I'll talk more about this in another episode. They actually did an episode about the rebirth of both Command and Conquer by Westwood, who did Dune 2, but also Age of Empires, which that shit's on the map now, right?
Yeah.
So it is this idea that like they could just do Dune Part 2 and make the real-time strategy game based on the movie, and it would be the right time for it.
Absolutely. So, until you become the Muad'Dib, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
Yes.
I really missed the Kwisatz Haderach, right? He is the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah. I was going to say, or until you stick your hand in the pain box. But people could interpret that incorrectly.
Especially because I've seen an amateur pornographic film that featured the pain box, but you didn't stick your hand inside.
Amateur, you say? I'm your private dancer, dancing for podcasts. Do what you want me to do. Tina Turner, R.I.P. I don't think she originally sang that about podcasts, but
All right.
what do I know?
What do you know?
Let's bang it. Bam.
Go, go, go.
Let's make a mess.